I'm so glad that I came to church today, and I'm so glad that you came to church. If we haven't met yet, my name is Josiah. I am the lead pastor of Thrive here. I hope that you feel so welcome, you feel so at home, and know that there is absolutely a place for you. And if this is your first time here, we'd love to have coffee with you after in the Connect bar. We have a gift for you, and it's a free coffee, not just in the coffee bar, but elsewhere. And it's my favorite place, and we'd love to give that to you, but it's just so good to see you. Now, also, I'm going to give you some insider information. Ooh, insider information. What is this? Let's lean in a bit. Okay, Easter is early this year. It is March 31st on Sunday, and so I'm going to give you some insider information. We've got such a great service plan, but I just believe that the Spirit of the Lord is going to move, and we're talking about the day the stone was rolled away. And I just believe that there's going to be a shift for you, your family, but not only that, but what a great opportunity to invite someone to Easter. Say, hey, come with me. Because there are some areas in people's lives that are dead that need the stone to be rolled away. That there are areas in their life where they need to feel and know and experience the life of Jesus to really get out of that grave. So I'll just encourage you, mark that down on your calendar. You don't need to pray about who I need to bring because God already said, go. So, okay, if someone comes to mind, I should invite them. So I just encourage you to do that, but it's going to be great. So I'm just so glad that you're here, and I'm excited today. Hey, we are in a series we are calling Blessin or Stressin. Blessin or Stressin. And we're talking about an area of our lives that everybody has this area of their life. And it's either an area where you're going to be a blessing or man, oh man, am I stressing? Am I stressing? And FP Canada did a survey. They've done it every year for the past 6 years. They've said this is the top area of stress for Canadians. And what we're talking about is we are talking about money. We're talking about money. I said this last week, and for those who didn't hear it this week, some people might be in this room and start stressing already. And that, oh man, he is talking about money. But whether Christian, non-Christian, statistically, the area that causes the most stress in people's lives is money. It's a top contributor of areas of divorce as well. And so with this, of knowing that money is a top area of a stress in, I wonder, how do we reconcile this scripture? How do we reconcile this scripture which says in Proverbs 10:22, the blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it? How do you reconcile that when at times it can be in the area of money, there most definitely is some sorrow? Could it be that how the world views and approaches money actually is leading to us stressing? And that God actually has a higher way for us to operate in this way, so that in the area of money, that it wouldn't be a place of stressing, but that it would actually be a place of blessing. And so we're going to be we started last week, we're looking at what does God say about money, how to manage it, how to approach it. And when we say blessing, we're not just saying only material things, but also the things of peace, of joy, of rest for your soul. And now you might be like, Josiah, come on, why are we talking about this? I thought this was like a one-off day that you talked about it last week, and I came back today. I was hopeful. Why are we touching on this? Because it can be uncomfortable. Like, you don't meet someone and say, hi, how are you? How's your money? If you do, well, that might be the answer why you don't have friends and you're not influencing people. But it's a top stressor. It's part of our daily life. Like Jesus said, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God, which means you got to live by bread. And bread costs money. And the other reason is, well, we want to see you thrive in life, in every area. And so that we can actually see that this area of your life, that you would walk in the way that God has intended. So it wouldn't be a place of great stress. And as soon as it comes up, it's like, oh my goodness, like, let's just not look at the statements. I'm so thankful that they come by email because I can just hit delete. But that we can move to a place where it is a blessing in our life. And now maybe this has happened to you, is maybe in the past, maybe someone has misused, misrepresented, or abused the area of money when it comes out of the Bible. If this has happened to you, I'm so sorry. And my hope is, my prayer is, and I believe this, is that through this series that the Lord will heal, will restore that area. That you would have life in that area. That is my hope and my prayer. So last week, if you weren't there, I would encourage you to check out the podcast. But we talked about money, you tool. Right? I looked at money, you tool. That money is not the material to build your life. It's not the material that what money can do or buy, is not the material that can bring rest, can bring peace, cannot bring security. That it is actually a tool. That God is our source for joy, for peace, for provision. And that Jesus said this. He said that you can't look to God and money. You can't serve two masters. It's either God or money, because I can't look to my right and my left at the same way. Same thing with money. When things come to push comes to shove, you're going to be looking one way. And so money is a tool. Money is not evil. It's been misquoted. Money is the root of all the evil, but Scripture actually says the love of money is the root of all evil. Right? In the same way, if you misuse or misapproach money, it's the same way as like if I was to take a wrench and use it as a toothbrush. It's evil. It's evil because of how I'm using it, if I'm misusing it. So we talked about what is the purpose of it, how we can, and how God actually wants us to prosper. And we said prosperity is having all that you need for all God has called you to do. That you'd have all sufficiency for every good work. And so we're going to continue in that today. Something that no one ever told me about having kids was the state my car would be in. With kids, my car is so messy. Like the back seat. The front seat, beautiful. But the back seat is so messy. Like there's like crumbs back there. There's like random toys back there. There's like mud marks everywhere. If someone asks me for a ride, it's like, hey, just give me 10 minutes. And then I pop my head, just give me 15 minutes. No problem. No problem. But on a plus, like if I'm stranded on the side of the road, like I have a week's supply of crumbs of goldfish crackers, I wouldn't call it old peanut butter. I'd call it dehydrated peanut butter. That I can just take it and scoop it and eat it, and hey, we're good. Okay, I'm not going to invite you for a feast. Okay, but it's a little bit of a mess. But now, when I borrow someone's car, I treat it differently. Like, it's not my own. I'm going to be giving it back. So I have it temporarily. So I'm like, listen, kids. I know this is your grandpa's car, but we're not eating in it. Okay? Like boots. Keep your shoes. Hey, toes down. I might even get into the car and click off the snow off my shoes before I'm entering. Do I do that on my own car? Oh, no. Do you lent me your car? Oh, yeah. I'm careful because it was lent to me. It's not actually mine. It's mine temporarily, but sooner or later, I'm going to be giving it back. The fact is, we treat things that we do not own differently than the things that we see are mine. What was borrowed or I have temporary, I approach it differently, I handle it differently, I treat it differently. And so as Christians, we believe this. And you're like, ooh, what do we believe? Well, we believe this. It says this is in Psalms 24. In Psalms 24, I'm going to pull it up here. Psalms 24. Ooh, the anticipation. Psalms 24 says this. It says, the earth is the Lord's and all its fullness. The earth is the Lord's. The earth is the Lord and all its fullness. The world and those who dwell therein. He has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. As Christians, we believe this, is that the earth is the Lord's. He made everything. He created it all. He owns it all. 1 Corinthians 29 also tells us that the earth is the Lord's. Psalms 50 tells us that he owns a ton of cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns it all. That God created everything, and he owns everything, and he lacks nothing. Everything we have in this life is on loan from God. We have it temporarily. We have it temporarily. The material things, I have it temporarily. The gifts, the talents, they are on loan. Even the very breath that I'm breathing is not mine. We see in the creation story that God formed and then breathed into mankind. He breathed into man, and he breathed into man. So really, we even sang it today, we have borrowed breath. And that the very breath that God breathed, the powerful thing is, it's not my breath, it's the Lord's. And yet, when I sing worship, I'm actually returning the breath that God gave me to the Lord. So there's something powerful even when you take what God has lent you and then you return it to the Lord. There's something powerful. That's why why do I walk in and I feel it? There's different than mass karaoke. We're worshiping God. We're returning the breath that he breathed into us, and now we are returning it to him. And as followers of Jesus, the Bible teaches that everything we have, we are stewards of it. That God has given it to us. We have it temporarily. We are stewards, including our money. Including our money. Everything, including our resources. Now you're like, hang on, Josiah. Hang on. Hang on, Pastor Josiah. I work for this money. Like, I work for this money. I put effort in for this money. I put hours in for this money. Gabriel, I'm sure he's a great angel, but he didn't deliver me this money. I work for this money. Yes, you did. But the skills, the giftings, the ability, the talent, the ethics, the work drive, the ideas are from the Lord. That Deuteronomy 8:8 says that God gives you the power or the ability to gain wealth. That the very breath you are breathing while you are working is from the Lord. See, seeing myself as the source for provision in my life puts pressure on me. It puts pressure on me to control things and circumstances that are way beyond my control. Way beyond my control. And it causes me then to be stressing. It causes me to be stressing. But when I approach it at this way, it's that it's not my money, but that I am a steward of the Lord's money. That he has given it to me, and like I can't take it with me. Ask the Vikings. They tried that. They buried their boats, their servants, everything with them, and it's still there. You can see it in a museum. Ask the Egyptians. Didn't work out well for them. See, the way I operate with my money will be different when I change my perspective of it's my money to I am now a steward of God's money and God's resources. That I am a steward. It changes the way, and I believe it is part of changing the area of your life from moving from I'm stressing to that money will now be a blessing in my life. That perspective shift that, oh, I'm actually just a steward of this money. Jesus tells a parable, and it's the parable of the talents. And Jesus says this, he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who traveled far away, and he calls his 3 servants. It's Matthew 25, verse 15. Matthew 25, verse 15, it says, and to one, so he gave all the different ones. To one he gave 5 talents, to another gave 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability, and immediately he went on a journey. Now, a talent is not that like he gave one 5 talents and he's like a triple threat. Like, yeah, I can sing, I can dance, I can, like, it's not talking about skills. But a talent it's a form of weighing money. It's a weighing system for money. And a talent actually would be like you'd use that 1 talent to weigh silver. And in today's money, 1 talent of silver would be $1.5 million. And so to one man he gave $7.5 million. Now, the American, so really he's a billionaire Canadian. To another man he gave 2, which is $3 million. And to another he gave $1.5 million. So that's not a little amount that he entrusted to them. That's actually quite a bit that he said, you are now a steward of it. I find it interesting, though, as well. It's to their own ability, that he gave it to their ability. Like, it seems unfair. Like, if I was the 1 talent dude and I saw the 5 talent dude, I'd be upset. But Proverbs 10:22 again says, the blessing of the Lord makes rich and adds no sorrow. And so could it be that if the 1 talent dude only had enough ability to steward 1 talent, that the 5 talents would have crushed him and would have been stressing and would have actually been a curse and not a blessing? But I do believe that you can increase your ability. We actually talked about that last year with enlarge, lengthen, strengthen, that we can increase, that we are called to increase. But the 3 servants, they stewarded the money. In Matthew 25, verse 16, it says this, then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded them with them and made another 5 talents. So he has 10 talents. And likewise, he who had received 2 gained 2 more. So what that is they stewarded the money. They were entrusted by the master. They stewarded the money, and they had increase. Now we have the third guy. He said, but he who received 1 went and dug it in the ground and hid his Lord's money. He dug it in the ground and hid his Lord's money. He buried it. He didn't do anything with it. We see in Matthew 25, verse 19, it says this, after a long time, this is a parable of Jesus. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled the accounts with them. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents beside them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things, and I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who received 2 talents, came and said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents beside them. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into my joy. And when it came to the one who buried it, he went on, what were you doing with it? Why didn't you do something with it? I could have actually just put it into the bank and got a better interest. Sure, it would have had to be an e-bank account, but I'm okay with that. But a good steward handles, we see in this parable, a good steward handles what was given and actually grows it. And what are we growing? It's not that the stewards had for their own benefit, because I have it temporarily, So it's going to be returned back to the Lord. So in other words, it's not for my benefit, but for my Lord's benefit. That whose it is. It's interesting to me that the master said this in Matthew 25, verse 21. Matthew 25, verse 21, it says this. It says, his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many. But that you are faithful. Hebrews 11:6 tells us that it is impossible to please God without faith. And that part of faith is being faithful, trusting God and stepping out in what he's called you to do. And being consistent in and out. Because I believe this is that faithfulness will result in fruitfulness. That faithfulness will result in fruitfulness. You want your marriage to be fruitful? Faithfulness in your marriage and attending to your marriage will result in fruitfulness. You want to go to the gym? I'll preach to myself here. Once a month apparently isn't enough. Faithfulness will result in fruitfulness. We'll see how faithful I am there, so that maybe next time when I'm going like this and this, you'll be like, whoa, look at... But faithfulness... Thanks, Scott. Okay. Faithfulness produces fruitfulness. It produces that in your finances as well. That when you are faithful in your finances, it will produce fruitfulness in your finances. We see this in Psalms 92, verse 13. It says, those who are planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God, right? That's where we got our name, Thrive, as well, these two verses. But that when you are planted, in order to be planted, you need to be faithful, that it will produce, that you will flourish, that you will be fruitful. John 15, Jesus says, abide in me, remain in me, faithful, and that what? That you will bear much fruit. He goes on to say, why? That it would bring glory to my Father. So faithfulness results in fruitfulness, which will then bring glory to God, including in our finances. I believe part of blessing in the area of our life is having fruitfulness. That like God said to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply, and then he told them what to do with the garden and the earth. But that to be fruitful. See, faith, I believe it does not maintain, but it does multiply. And it's interesting, is in Luke 16, verse 10, Jesus said this, if you are faithful in little things, you will be faithful in large ones. But if you are dishonest in little things, you won't be honest with greater responsibilities. And if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches in heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's things, my car, who should you be trusted? Why should you be trusted with things of your own? No one can serve two masters, again, Jesus says. For you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise or think little of the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. It's interesting, though, is that it's when we show our faithfulness in the little things or in what is in the least, as Jesus says, which is money, that I will be able to then handle and steward true riches. In the same way, like my toddler, man, there's a lid on that cup. There's a lid on that cup. And if she's throwing the cup onto the ground, I'm not going to be giving her a crystal glass with chocolate milk in it. Who has crystal anymore? Maybe you do. I do not. But I don't give that to her because, well, she can't steward it. It wouldn't be cared for correctly. If you're faithful in the little things, be ruler over much, including what Jesus says is eternal things. So I think one tool that can really help to be a faithful steward is this. It's a budget. Whoa, you're like, Josiah, so deep. Wow. But Proverbs 27 tells us to know the state of your flock. In old times, where's your wealth? Well, you didn't invest it into accounts. You invested it into livestock and things that would produce. Know the state of your flock. In other words, know the state of your finances. Know your incomes, your outgoes, your debt, your fixed costs, what you have to pay, variable costs. Because if you don't identify, you can't address. Like if you don't identify what's happening in your finances, you can't address what's happening in your finances. So where am I financially? When I look at where am I spending, is it lining up with what are actually my goals and my priorities? Or are there changes and tweaks that need to be made? Is my income a little less than the outgo? A budget will tell you. See, a budget really is a plan to get where I want to go with my priorities in terms of money. It's being intentional. Not the impulses of, oh man, I really want this thing, or I feel the need to have it right now. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says this, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. Good planning, part of good planning, I believe, is a budget. And without a budget, it's like trying to hold water in your hands. It might work for a little bit, but eventually it's going to go through the cracks, and at the end, you're not going to have too much. And I'll tell you what, then it'll cause you to be stressing. I think a budget is a way to get a handle on our finances and steward and be intentional in stewarding so that we can steward for increase and freedom. A budget really is a structure that I think causes things to be blessing. I like to think of it kind of like actually a container for your money. And if you have different containers, like I have a water bottle here, I didn't bring all the water I was going to drink today in my hand. It'd be ridiculous. You would not give me a handshake today. And I would not have it, but I put it in a container. If you were for containers, maybe you'd put necessities like food, housing, etc. Maybe giving, because we are intentional about our giving. It's not a second thought, but intentional with our generosity. Proverbs 11:24 tells us that there's one who scatters yet increases more. There is one who withholds more than is right, but leads to poverty. The generous soul will be made rich, and he who waters will also be watered himself. I believe when you are generous, you actually take on a character of God. Maybe another bucket would be for fun things, like date nights and investing in your marriage or your kids. Maybe saving, investing, right? Jesus talks about in Luke 14, I should say, is that there's one who builds. You need to count the cost before you build the tower. So, okay, I'm going to save, I'm going to invest for vacay, for my house, for that project that I want to do. To be a good steward, to invest. Maybe it's debt repayment. Now, I understand, like, there's different ways that you can approach debt and you can leverage it, and I get it. I think the thing that I would say if I have debt is to ask this question, is how I'm using debt causing things to be a blessing or a stressin'? And if it is causing me to be stressing, is that thing that I'm financing or is that thing that I'm leveraging myself worth it in the end? Because again, Proverbs 10:22 says, the blessing of the Lord makes rich and adds no sorrow. I also know in Proverbs 10:7, it tells us that the borrower is slave to the lender. There is less freedom in debt. So maybe that is taking steps to get out of debt. Now, as you go through a budget, I think there might be even times where am I getting too practical for you guys? Is that why it's getting quiet? Too practical. You guys want something spiritual that you can take home that's not applicable. Okay, let me tell you. So you go through, and you might be like this. You might be, okay, is this thing, as I'm going through my budget, is this thing worth the stress in my life? Or can I cut it out? Is it worth, if I made that change, could I cut it out? Did you know if you just cut out $27.39 a day, that is $10,000 in a year? This year, it's actually $10,000, $27.39, because it's a leap year. But the things that I want, if they're causing stress, is it worth it? Is it worth it? We talked about this in Got Soup last year. We talked about this of Esau, how he sacrificed his future for fulfilling the needs of now. And are there things in my life that I need to change because I'm sacrificing tomorrow to fulfill what I want today? You know, when Natalie lost her job and her income dropped 60%, I'll tell you what, we had a budget before where we like loosely did things. Like, we know where things are going, but we sat down. We had a budget. And we found savings. We found areas of like, oh, this doesn't line up with what our priorities are, so we're cutting this. Oh, this, we're going to actually be intentional. Josiah, maybe you need to take Amazon off your phone. We didn't eat out. We made changes because our priorities, we said, okay, these are our priorities, so these are our buckets. And then we said, okay, here's our necessity bucket. Here's our giving bucket. Here's our invest/save bucket. Okay, we're going to be intentional in these areas. And I'll tell you what, after we did that, it caused us to move to a place where, okay, there's peace in this area. We're being intentional about it. And maybe today you are in a place where it's great financial pressure. You might say it's akin to the backseat of my car. There's goldfish crumbs everywhere. There's peanut butter everywhere. It's a mess. It's a mess, Josiah. And it's a place of great stress and great pressure. A budget, I believe, will help you know where you are. But can I encourage you this? Is that that God is more than able. That God is more than able. This isn't a message of pull up your bootstraps. God is able. That it's not too great for him. That he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Everything is the Lord's. It will be too much if you do it in your own way. If you continue doing it in your own way, you'll continue to be a Stressin. But I believe there's an opportunity and hope that God, he is our source, because he is, and that we have the opportunity to actually change our ways and perspectives so that it would actually be an area that it would actually be blessing in our life. And if you do find yourself in that area, I would actually encourage you that we actually have a free resource we want to give you. It's called Financial Peace. This is like get in the weeds on your own. But it's about practical ways of how you can get your finances in order according to God's way, and how you can then build and steward. So if you are that, you can just talk to me individually. You can like talk to Natalie. You can fill out the form online, like, hey, connect, and just tell us, I only see it, so you're good. I'm not going to tell anybody, but I want to get that into your hands because I believe there is hope. I think the enemy, what he wants to say is, it's too much. You're too far. See, that pastor guy's talking about money at church, and he's saying it's the Lord's. You screwed up. Well, that's not the heart here, nor is the heart of God. There is never a place where you're too far, too gone for the Lord. Nothing is impossible for him. And I believe that you can invite him to come alongside you and to lead you. But you and I are stewards. We're not owners. We have this temporarily. What an opportunity, though. What an opportunity to know that I'm not my own source. That the Lord is my source, and I'm just a steward of it. And now I can operate by God's principles to walk in that way. That brings increase, that brings freedom, and I believe that will make eternal impact. That faithfulness produces fruitfulness. And that, I believe at the end, that we'll hear these 5 words, well done, good and faithful servant. Everything I have, everything you have is because of the